2020, a young woman is missing, but her family had to fight so hard to get any national attention.
Why is no one saying Tamika Houston's name at the same time as Natalie Holloway or Lacey Peterson? I went to the key locations to follow the investigation.
A search warrant to test for possible blood.
In your heart, you're thinking something's wrong.
I knew at that point that time was of the essence. She's gone. Like, we have to find her. She has to be in danger.
It was just like, oh my God, what's going on?
You went to Spartanburg. You wanted to see the location.
If you're looking for somebody, you gotta go. You gotta look for them.
I remember just sitting outside of her house in the car by myself, still not knowing what's going on.
I wanna know before I leave here. Y'all gonna tell me something. Either she dead or we done found her.
You're Tamika's last known boyfriend.
Yeah.
You've got to know that people are going to look at you.
I told them, you're wasting time.
Tamika's home is here, and then they find the car across town at this apartment complex, which made no sense.
I saw this vision of someone looking through these woods or these bushes. I knew it was connected to Tamika.
Was that a real moment for you in this investigation? The key unlocks a door?
We talked about her not being here at 25.
You talked about her not being alive?
Yes.
What do you mean? When police entered this home on June 16, 2004, they find a disturbing scene. A dog which has apparently given birth to a litter of puppies with no owner in sight. That discovery would trigger the search for 24-year-old Tamika Houston. You get a call from Tamika's aunt that she's missing. How frantic was she?
In missing person cases, you learn from how their family reacts. And once I met with Rebecca and talked with her, I knew it was serious. My name is Steve Lamb. I was the lieutenant over the investigation bureau at the time. I did not know Tamika, but I felt like that Rebecca knew something was not right.
My sister Gabriella called me and she said, listen, she said, Beck, she said, I called her and she hasn't called me back yet. I was like, oh my gosh, Gabby, you know what? She hasn't called me back either.
And what are you thinking?
I panic at that point because it's one thing for her to ignore a casual message, but not a message like, Tamika, I need you to call me right now. So I picked up the phone and called the Spartanburg Public Safety Department to report her missing.
So you get this call. What's your first effort to check this out?
So our patrol division responds first. They check the residence. Nothing unusual, knock on the door, check the mailbox, check with neighbors.
I remember being on the phone and they're telling me, there doesn't seem to be signs of a disturbance, like the doors are locked. Her car wasn't there, which so they're like, oh, maybe she did just take a trip.
To be honest with you, it was typical for her to, go through a moment where she was just doing her own thing. So it didn't really raise any red flags.
Tamika's parents were divorced. Her dad lived in South Carolina and her mom, Gabriella, lived in Virginia.
It wasn't unlike her to get in her car and drive from Spartanburg and show up at Gabby's doorstep with no notice. Showed up in Miami and called me and was like, hey, I'm going to come down for dinner tonight. We had family all up and down the East Coast. Just no one had heard from her.
At what point do you go in?
One of the investigators felt like there was an odor coming from the residence.
Well, I knew that, there was potentially a crime scene. Honestly, I expected to find her in there, but she wasn't.
They did a wellness check, and they found things in her home that were completely inconsistent with her personality.
There was a dog inside and a puppy, and I think there were more puppies at one time, but they had died. The dog had drank all the water out of its bowl, eaten all of its food, drank all the water out of the toilet. It was just obvious that she had not been there in quite some time.
When law enforcement finally showed up at her house, her pit bull was there on the verge of starvation. There was only one puppy who was still barely alive.
There's death inside. It's like a crime scene that the dog is telling us, she's gone, she's missing. Go find her.
That scared me. That really, really scared me because I knew Macy was like her child. It was just a horrific scene.
Tamika's Aunt Rebecca, her mom's younger sister, lived in Miami. The two had been close since Tamika was a child.
We're only 7 years apart, so honestly, she was really more like a little sister to me.
That's Tamika opening a present from her Aunt Becky.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I wanted to see.
She was full of personality. She was only 4'11", but when she walked into the room, you'd think she's 6 feet tall because she just commanded the attention of the room.
Me and Tamika actually met in junior high school. She had just transferred from another district, and I was assigned to her that day. Kind of showed her around the school, became fast friends.
What was the bond like between the two of them, Tamika and Zelda?
Zelda and Tamika loved each other. They were, thick as thieves right away. They were more than friends, they were sisters.
At the time, Tamika lived with her father, Anthony, in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where she would eventually settle.
She loved my dad. They fuss, fight, just like any other father and daughter relationship. But I do know that my dad, he loved the ground that my sister walked on. My name is Antonia. Tamika was my big sister. I couldn't tell that she was much older than me. Like, she was always playing the games that I wanted to play. They said my sister had a temper. Like, she would snap on you in a blink of an eye. But she was a really good person.
She was free-spirited and very, very spiritual because she grew up in a church.
She had a humble spirit. That was just, oh my God, that was just so different.
She was talented.
Oh, she had a voice, yes. Yeah, she could sing. She really could.
She wanted to try for American Idol. Tell me about that.
We went to American Idol. God, that was an experience.
Over 10,000 people packed into the Georgia Dome.
We were excited. We were happy to be there. And she made it through the first round.
Her favorite artist was Lauryn Hill. She could sing her songs just the way that she sung them.
And just like Lauryn Hill in Sister Act 2,
because I'm happy.
Tamika does a rendition of His Eye is on the Sparrow at her aunt's wedding.
His eye is on the sparrow, and I know.
She sang at your wedding.
She did, yeah. It's one of the most special memories we have. We talked about it for years, even before I was engaged to be married. I'm going to sing at your wedding one day.
He watches me.
Everyone talked about her big voice and this tiny, tiny body that you just would not or could not ignore.
You were just drawn to her, and strangers were drawn to her. She was a little, I think, too open-hearted to folks, and a little bit too trusting.
She had a soft heart for people and for animals.
Yeah, she loved animals. I'm not a dog person, but Tamika loved her dogs.
And now, strangely, police have found her dog Macy seemingly abandoned, with Tamika nowhere to be found.
There was no way she would just up and leave her beloved dog to starve.
In your heart, you're thinking something's wrong.
I knew at that point that time was of the essence. She's disappeared. She's gone. Like, we have to find her. She has to be in danger. That's actress Erica Alexander shining on the red carpet after starring in the Oscar-winning movie American Fiction.
One day maybe you'll learn that not being able to relate to other people isn't a badge of honor.
But so many remember her as that hard-charging lawyer in the 90s sitcom Living Single.
Well, I'm the lawyer here. I know how to work the system.
Erica Erica's also an activist and a documentarian. In 2020, in the midst of protest over racial injustices in this country, she was approached about creating a podcast about Tamika Houston's disappearance.
And at the time I thought, actually, probably no, because I knew then that very few people would want to make something about a black girl. But then, of course, I said yes, thinking, well, if not you, Erica, who? Audible Originals presents Finding Tamika, hosted by Erica Alexander.
Months of reporting leads to Finding Tamika, a 10-part true crime audio series executive produced by actor and comedian Kevin Hart and influential radio host Charlemagne the God.
Kevin was on the same time that I was. He was like, man, this is a story that we need to amplify because of the epidemic of black women that go missing in this country.
You really gave a lot of your life to this story.
That's what it needed. It needed sweat equity.
If you know anything about Erica Alexander, if you ever worked with her, she's hands-on.
I hunted for clues and explanation with the family. I rode along with a detective who trailed the case, all with a goal to truly find out what really happened to Tamika.
You went to Spartanburg. You wanted to see the location.
Yeah.
You needed to be there.
It was important to be there because everything took place there. Cool, Spartanburg.
Spartanburg. It's a small town in the south. Started out as a cotton mill area.
A lot of people come here to raise their families. So I would describe it as a place that you can call home.
If you look at the statistics, I don't think Spartanburg is per capita anymore violent than any other. But like every other jurisdiction, you're far more likely to be killed by somebody that knows you than you are a stranger.
I remember just sitting outside of her house in the car by myself, still not knowing what's going on. And then I heard that my sister was missing. We definitely thought she would be walking down the street in a minute.
I remember Rebecca calling and saying that they were coming here to meet with the police department. It was just like, oh my God, what's going on?
I booked a flight and I had to come here.
Rebecca, well connected in the PR world, jumped in to use her experience in the media to help spread the word about her niece's disappearance.
The first thing I did after landing was go directly to the police station. I remember being very fixated on getting the public information officer to do a press release.
I remember saying she wasn't going to leave the building until someone did some media stuff, and we did. And I think just of her persistence that I felt like it was important.
Tamika's mom, Gabriella, makes an emotional plea on the local news for her daughter's return.
I know deep down in my heart that somebody knows something. But please, we plead, just let us know where she is.
We just kind of designed a flyer, and we're just putting up all around town.
Flyers have gone up in her neighborhood to help police.
At the top, in bright red type, was the word missing. Below it, in black, all caps, Tamika Antoinette Houston. Next to a description of her tattoo was a photo of Tamika. It's the Tamika everyone knows, confident, assured, and in control.
What are you hearing from her friends around that time about her habits?
Yeah, a lot of her friends are thinking she's out of town. And a lot of people originally are saying that that's not unusual.
They thought she was going on a trip, and all those little possibilities we have to run down.
Normally she would have told someone, some family member, where she was going or if she was going somewhere.
When she disappeared, Tamika was living alone. She had recently quit her waitressing job, and her family says she was trying to find herself.
The reason why it took a moment for it to be discovered that she was missing, because she was at a crossroads. She wasn't working. She had told her mom that she wanted to return to school.
She had broken up with her boyfriend.
She had broken up with her boyfriend. So it was just kind of like a perfect storm of events.
You're her last known boyfriend. How did you meet, and what was special about her?
My family had a corner store. It's called Shirley's Pantry. And I leave the pantry and I saw Tamika, and Tamika's 4'11".
Small.
Yes, but thick in the waist. Very thick in the waist. So, and I could see she was very attractive. As I was getting on my motorcycle, I heard a voice say, "Do you have an extra helmet?" So I said, "No, you can wear mine." And it was like love at first sight. It was like a trust love, not just an attraction. You know, something deeper than that.
Tamika was someone who came into Terrance's life like a comet. He was newly separated, and her boldness and free-spiritedness was a breath of fresh air.
I know that she was deeply in love with him and vice versa.
I remember Terrance being a funny guy. Always joking, always laughing, and he kept my sister smiling. I do remember that.
Terrance was actually the first boyfriend that Tamika was really serious about. Overall, he seemed to me to have a very kind heart. He seemed very protective of Tamika.
And it was Terrance who first raised the alarm about Tamika being missing.
I got a phone call from Terrance, who left me a message actually.
Hi, Becky. This is Terrance. I've been trying to get in contact with Tamika. Nobody seems to have heard from her, so I just want to know if she's sick. That's all. Thank you.
He said that he hadn't been in touch with Tamika, that she wasn't returning his phone calls. My instinct was that I know that one of the last conversations I had with her, she had told me that they had broken up. So I thought that she was perhaps just avoiding him. But surely she wouldn't avoid me, so I'll just call her.
Days with no word from Tamika, Rebecca contacts the Spartanburg Police Department asking them to conduct a welfare check on her home. So it wasn't unusual for her mother or relatives not to have heard from her for a while. Nobody was alarmed right away.
Not right away. Not until we went to the house and Macy was in.
Tamika's ex-boyfriend, Terrance, kind of got the ball rolling, started calling people.
He's the one who told everybody that he couldn't find Tamika. So it's a very ironic thing to be the person who calls Rebecca and the mother, Gabby, and says, "I can't find Tamika." And suddenly the eyes start turned toward you.
You always look to boyfriends. I mean, that's the first place you look.
2020 obtained never-before-seen law enforcement interviews. In this videotape statement, Rebecca tells police that Tamika had shared some concerns about Terrance.
He was staying up real late at night, not really sleeping, pacing the floor, quoting scripture, like excessively, that his actions were being directed by God. It just worried me.
According to talking to her friends and other people in the community, those two were over.
I mean, she was like, "Oh, well, we're not together anymore." And she started to cry about it. And I was like, "Well, you guys, y'all will get back together." And she was like, she called me Zeke. She was like, "Zeke, I don't know about that this time around. I think I'm done."
She and Terrance had a pretty volatile relationship.
So you got the feeling that any place where there's smoke, there's fire. He admitted to that.
She and he had some domestic violence type issues prior. So that was the first person that we were interested in this case.
Her and Terrance had this domestic dispute. So it was all kind of thoughts going through my mind.
Now, was Terrance involved? Did he do something and something had gone too far?
Police want to know what Terrance knows, so they bring him in for questioning.
Lacey Peterson was 8.5 months pregnant when she disappeared from her Modesto home Christmas Eve.
Her husband Scott says he was out fishing when she vanished.
Around the same time Tamika has gone missing, Scott Peterson is in the news. He's a suspect in the murder of his wife, Lacey.
Scott Peterson attended this New Year's Eve vigil for Lacey in Modesto, California.
All the way across the country in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Tamika's family is holding a vigil too. And all eyes are on her concerned ex-boyfriend, Terrance.
We really worried about her. Been by Tamika's home and none of her mail has been picked up. She hadn't called her mom.
There's a vigil for Tamika.
Mm-hmm.
You attend this vigil. You're Tamika's last known boyfriend.
Yeah.
Now she's missing. You've got to know that people are going to look at you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was prepared for that.
Terrence was at that vigil, and some people were looking suspiciously at him.
I know that Anthony, Tamika's dad, had strong feelings about that. I felt like maybe he wasn't being as forthcoming about information, and I just wanted to make sure that he was telling me everything he knew, and that if he wasn't going to tell me, that he was at least being forthcoming with police.
And now with cameras rolling, Terrence is ready to answer some questions.
Yeah, I want y'all to tape it. Yeah, do that, man. Yeah, that's... Yeah.
You know I'm going to do that. I'm going to shut the door.
Ain't no problem. That's fine. Yeah. Good.
We started following up on past history and interviewed him to see if he may be linked to her disappearance.
If you talk to anybody, man, that knows me, man, I ain't nothing but love, man. Ain't nothing but love. And you know what I'm saying, I have been for the last 2 weeks, man, Scott Peterson.
He was pretty open about the fact that there had been violence in their relationship. That's not something that most people volunteer. So the fact that he was honest about something that was inculpatory, I think, tended to make them believe him a little bit more when he said, look, I haven't seen her. I understand why you're talking to me, but I didn't do it.
I could disappear on y'all and make y'all do some work. My people been loading up, man. You want to leave here? I'm like, no, I don't want to leave. I want to know before I leave here, y'all gonna tell me something. Either she did or we done found her before I leave here.
You tell police that even though you've broken up, that you still have feelings for her.
We had to separate. But the bond, it wasn't going nowhere.
I love her, man, and I miss her, and I want her to come home.
Police have no evidence linking Terrence to Tamika's disappearance, but he remains a person of interest.
What must it be like to suddenly walk in a room and people are saying that you killed your girlfriend or you could be a murderer? Where do you hide? Where do you go? You don't.
Word of Tamika's disappearance spread through the community, with missing persons posters plastered everywhere. One at this gas station caught the eye of a woman who noticed the description of Tamika's car matched an abandoned vehicle at her apartment complex.
Sunday, I got called at home and said that patrol officers had found her vehicle on the other side of town.
Tamika's home is here, and then they find the car across town at this apartment complex, which made no sense.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think for a while it confused them.
You find the car. What's your first assessment once you find it?
We knew it had been there a while. The windows was cracked. It had been raining in them. So we could not link her to being anywhere in that area. And there was really nothing forensic-wise that we recovered from that vehicle. It wasn't like there was her blood or DNA or anything.
And now there's her car, but no Tamika. So I'm sure that sent fear through her family's heart.
That was really tough, because when you're going through it, it's like your emotions, it's like such a range of emotions, because at first it's like, oh my gosh, they found their car. You're thinking, oh, well, maybe she's just been staying with someone, so, oh, this is the break that we need. But then, you know, when we all descend upon, the police are kind of like, it kind of looks like this car has been here for quite a long time. It just makes you even a little bit more desperate.
Kids, they used to say to me, like, your sister's dead. She's never coming back home. Y'all need to stop searching for her.
Finding Tamika's abandoned car was a blow to her family. But inside it, police make a key discovery.
Her car was found at Barksdale Apartments, and during the search of her car, a key was located.
It was a set, I believe, 5 or 6 keys. You can tell one's a house key, 2 of them's a vehicle key, and then maybe 2 more as locks.
They didn't fit her house, they didn't fit her car. We didn't really know what these keys were for or where they had come from.
That led us in a little bit of the right direction and also into more problems.
You find keys in this car that don't seem to belong to her.
Correct.
That was a critical moment.
Yes. We had no clue where they went to.
That was an added mystery that the police were dealing with at the time.
Now that Tamika's car has been discovered abandoned, detectives want to go back and take a closer look inside her home.
But once we found the car, that kind of started the case to be more suspicious that there may be something criminal involved.
I just remember being across the house. As it started to get dark, they were spraying the luminol and that very eerie, emanating purplish blue lights that you see coming from the house. And that was really difficult because it felt very surreal and it's terrifying because you're like, what's going to be revealed?
No signs of foul play, no new leads at Tamika's house. But then, a 911 call sends police on a mission.
Her car was found abandoned on the north side of town.
No one has seen or heard from her in nearly a month.
I want Tamika to know that we love her and we want her to come home.
In the very beginning, where does this investigation take you? Are you getting any leads?
Not really. We put out some stuff locally, media, and talked to the families, neighborhoods, some community people here who knew Tamika, but we really didn't have a lot to go on.
And you get this 911 call.
Yes.
Department 911. My brother just came to my house and told me that he killed his girlfriend and put her in Clear Park Lake.
You have a 911 call that talks about someone being put in the lake that's been killed, and it's pretty much the exact same length of time the car had been sitting in the parking lot.
Did it sound credible that somebody might have tossed somebody in this small lake?
It sounded credible to us, just the way the guy was talking.
Where does he live? He stay over there in Barksdale.
The Barksdale is the same apartment complex where police found Tamika's abandoned car, and it's just blocks away from Cleveland Park Lake. Police get wind of a 911 call that happened about the time of her disappearance. You listened to it. Mm-hmm. What did you make of that?
Who is making this phone call? And they're talking about dredging the lake and doing all these things with the lake. It just adds kind of to the desperation of the situation.
We actually put some divers in that day, 2 local divers, and they couldn't find anything. And then we put cadaver dogs were here as well, and they kind of cleared it.
That 911 caller was never identified, but police eventually determined it was not related to Tamika's case.
You get a lot of calls, most of which turn out to be either innocently mistaken or crank calls.
Someone had reached out to me and said that they were a psychic and they could provide me with information where Tamika was. And all I needed to do was Western Union them.
And you did?
I did.
Just out of desperation?
Just out of desperation. And he gave me this ridiculous story of, that she was being held against her will, and just very vague information. In hindsight, I know better.
That's the downside of publicity there. Lots of crank calls. The upside is you get some really, really good information.
In fact, there were those who truly wanted to help the family. Like Elaine Painter, a local Spartanburg woman who says she sometimes has visions about people.
Come back to me. My husband was leaving for work. He brought the newspaper in and laid it on the kitchen table. Come back to me. He said, this beautiful girl's missing. She's a young girl. We need to pray for her. So I looked at the picture, and she had this captivating smile and these beautiful eyes. Come back to me. And I moved the paper over, and I just put my hand on her face, and I prayed that they would find her alive. Come back to me. I just pray a lot. I'm not a psychic. I don't read cards. I saw this vision of someone looking through this woods or these bushes, and I knew it was connected to Tamika. Come home.
Elaine felt her vision was too powerful to ignore, so she calls police.
We have that quite a bit. On major cases, people feel like they know some information in some fashion or form. We listen to everyone who contacts us. We rode around a few places, and she knew some things about some areas that we've had major crime scenes.
They stopped by this lake. He said, do you think she could be in the lake? I said, no, she's not in the lake. You won't find her body in water anywhere. He said, "Do you think she was shot?" And I said, "No, she wasn't shot. There was a lot of blood." I guess I thought I was just going to ride over there and I was going to see this guy looking through some bushes and say, "Okay, case solved." But I would go back home crying every time because I thought God sent me to find her. I couldn't, so what am I doing? I'm wasting their time.
Miss Painter was very humble, amazing lady, was just trying to help out in the case, and I wanted to listen to her.
Police are actually open to Elaine's help, and months later, she goes on another ride-along with them after she says she has a new and very specific vision.
I could see blood, her crumbled body on the left side of the closet.
A closet? Police aren't sure what to make of this.
I can't stop searching.
But they do know that time is of the essence, and Tamika's Aunt Rebecca is doing everything she can to push for more public attention. You're a PR exec. Your husband's an NFL player. If anybody should be able to attract attention, I would think it would be the two of you.
Yeah, you
But yet you're struggling to get the message out.
Right. I was used to the media being, enthralled with these stories. I assumed that I was going to be able to get that sort of attention for Tamika, and I could not have been more wrong.
It's hard to beat the media for getting a face out there. Whatever leads it could generate, that's what she was after.
I need all eyes looking for her. Anything that anyone I could reach out to, I was.
While Tamika's case did get local news coverage, Rebecca noticed that some other missing women were getting widespread national attention.
27-year-old Lori Hacking went for her morning jog and never returned.
Tamika was missing, actively missing. I had no leads on where she was, that it was pretty devastating to see Lori Hacking's case become a national story really overnight.
And you're being met with silence.
Yeah.
How frustrating was that?
Extremely frustrating.
But her persistence pays off. Tamika's case is now getting noticed by John Walsh's America's Most Wanted.
Tamika Houston is a young woman who disappeared down in South Carolina.
Will the spotlight on her case now lead to finding Tamika?
As the seasons changed, Rebecca continued to use her PR skills to advocate for Tamika. She focused her attention on Fox's Saturday evening primetime hit, America's Most Wanted.
You had gone to America's Most Wanted.
Yeah. I got the attention of a young associate producer at the time, Tiffany Cross, who said that she was drawn to the story because Tamika looked like her.
Her case file had kind of made it through a lot of producers and landed on my desk. And as soon as I read the story and I just looked through the notes and I talked to her aunt, Rebecca Howard, this was a story I knew I could own.
Tiffany advocated for our stories. It was officially greenlit. And that October, Tiffany was off to Spartanburg.
I just wanted to get on ground and understand who the people in this community were and what they could tell me about Tamika.
When you're thinking about national publicity, America's Most Wanted, why did that matter?
Brands matter. That's a top shelf brand. But also that means that they have the audience. The audience is looking. It gives them assurance that maybe if they think they know something, that they should call it in. And that's huge.
Tom Morris, America's Most Wanted.
The unique thing about America's Most Wanted is we worked alongside law enforcement. The first person I met in law enforcement on Tamika's story was Detective Steve Lamb.
All the leads that we've chased down have run into basically a dead end. I think they helped with the case, putting it out on a national level.
Steve Lamb seemed very dedicated to finding out what happened to Tamika.
We started just building flow charts of family and friends and people that she had dated or had relationships with, and we started seeking out all those individuals to communicate with them.
One name that kept coming up routinely when I got on site was Terrence.
The community and the family felt like Terrence was a person of interest in the case.
Terrence says he expected police to suspect him, but not his own family, especially an aunt who helped raise him.
So I asked her, why haven't you gotten with me and called me and prayed with me? She looked me in my face and she said, We thought you did it.
That must have hurt.
I tore my heart out my chest.
Terrence was very offended that people thought he had something to do with Tamika's disappearance. I told Terrence we wanted to speak with him. I armed our reporter with tiny lipstick cameras, and we set off in a car behind him and sent him to talk to Terrence.
You're telling me you did not have anything to do with it, correct? Exactly.
At one point, he even got down on his knees, talking to our reporter, trying to plead that he did not do this.
Why do you agree to talk to America's Most Wanted?
I wanted the story to get out. I'm thinking like, okay, America's Most Wanted, they're stable, they have good researchers, they have good, but y'all come with this, so I'm like, y'all didn't come to help find her. You came to get a confession. You're wasting time.
Of course, you always look to boyfriends, but if there's nothing there, at a certain point you have to move on.
Over time, we felt like that he was not involved in her disappearance.
One thing that I've always thought about Tamika, and I always wanted people to know, is that she was a very spiritual person. Tamika knew that she would not live long.
We talked about her not being here at 25.
You talked about her not being alive?
Yes.
What do you mean?
She knew that something tragic was going to happen to her.
You're saying she didn't think she was going to live long?
No, she knew. I didn't say think. She knew she wasn't going to live to be 25. Knew. We had these conversations.
Spartanburg detectives with the America's Most Wanted team in tow are now focusing on those keys found in Tamika's car.
They told us about it, and then we filmed them finding the keys.
Matching the key was basically finding a needle in the haystack.
And it's that key that begins to unlock the mystery into Tamika's disappearance.
We're able to trace it back to an apartment complex, but even then, the odyssey was just beginning.
We go through with management, knocking on the door.
Detectives go from door to door before making a shocking discovery.
Investigators found a really big bleach stain, which is Latin for uncovering something up.
In the very beginning, where does this investigation take you? Are you getting any leads?
People knew that Tamika had gone missing.
Was that a real moment for you in this investigation? You finally, the key unlocks the door?
I thought we met something like this. Say on TV, but not in real life.
That was the key piece of evidence that they needed to figure out what exactly happened to Tamika, and that was just the beginning.
People had seen her here.
Yes, had seen her and thought that she had dated someone.
Entering apartment 215, Fremont Apartments.
The investigators found a really big bleach stain, which is Latin for uncovering something up.
And his explanation for the stain was that it was red Kool-Aid. Red Kool-Aid.
Which is amazing in a way, because this leads to the discovery, which leads them right here.
I thought you had to be a monster.
You said that this case touched you like no other had. Why?
Because I know how much black girls don't matter.
There's a woman out there who's helpless, and we don't know what happened to her.
Family members say Tamika would never leave her pet home alone.
The weeks turn into months. The search goes on. No sign of Tamika.
I still had so much hope that she's going to pop up. She's going to pop up.
Tamika's black Honda CRX was found here at the Barksdale apartment complex, but there was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no Tamika.
They find Tamika's car, and then they find these keys. What did you learn about those keys?
I look at keys all the time, and I never think about what's on them. Sometimes there are things that identify them. You think that that's just the key brand, but it turns out that the key maker had a code. AA14. That's the number on the keys that they found in the car.
And they weren't Tamika's keys?
No, they weren't. But that code was important. Fate must have been on Lieutenant Lamb's side that day as he stepped into one of the local key shops. Well, fate and fate.
We just decided to go to a local locksmith who has been here for decades and show him the keys to see if he had any ideas. And one of the keys had a stamp, and it was a code that he recognized that he had created.
It was crazy. Again, AA-14. It told him that he made the key, but also through his files, suddenly, boom, he can tell you where those keys fit.
When this particular key was brought to us, we knew it was a housing authority key, so we then cross-referenced it, and we saw the AA-14 matched the Fremont school apartment.
That code told him that it was made for the Fremont school apartments.
Which is amazing in a way, because this leads to the discovery, which leads them right here. How do you even begin to figure out where these keys go to here?
We just went to management and told them what we were doing, and we were allowed to try the keys.
With Tamika missing and the clock ticking, the question is, could she be held inside that apartment complex?
We tried every single apartment, and the last one opened.
Was that a real moment for you in this investigation? You finally, the key unlocks a door?
Yes, it was. I mean, it was great for us. I think it was one of the turning points in the case.
It opens like a storage room. And as it turns out, when somebody moves out in those apartments, they just swap locks from an apartment that's empty or another room, and they just swap the locks between the two rooms, and they keep no record of it.
When he tried the keys and the door opened, that was the key piece of evidence that they needed to figure out what exactly happened to Tamika, and that was just the beginning.
It didn't fit an active apartment, but at least we knew we were in the right apartment complex at that point.
We processed it just to make sure she was not being held down there, but it turned into nothing.
And had Tamika had any connection to this apartment building, that, as far as you knew?
Loosely, we thought, but we didn't have anything for sure. But now, once we started talking to people in the apartment complex and things, people began to know who she was.
People had seen her here?
Yes, had seen her and thought that she had dated somebody named Chris that lived here.
Tamika's best friend, Zelda, had actually met Chris, but only one time. The last time she saw Tamika.
She knocked on the door, and she had a guy with her, and they came in, and she was like, "Hey, Zelda, this is my friend Chris." And I was like, "Hey, Chris," and he was kind of standoffish. I'm like, "Where did he come from?" She was like, "Oh, he's just my friend." His demeanor was really odd. I'm like, who is this guy?
Chris Hampton was another boyfriend of Tamika's, and he had a little bit of a record.
He was out on a bank robbery, on some probation.
He had actually called the FBI when they were working that bank robbery, saying he hadn't done it, that it wasn't him, and but they were already showing his pictures.
What had you known about Chris Hampton? Anything?
Nothing. From my understanding, he was a relatively a new person kind of in her universe. I was her aunt. We did have a very sisterly relationship, but I think she would look to me for approval. If she just met somebody that she wasn't really sure about, like by the time that she lets me know that she's dating someone, it would be more of a serious type of relationship. So I had no clue whatsoever that she even knew this person.
He was one of the people she had dated in the past that we put on the list that we were trying to contact and interview.
We determined at some point that Christopher Hampton had been a tenant in an apartment there at Fremont Apartments. So he very much became a person of interest.
Detectives begin talking with Christopher Hampton, who tells them that the last time he saw Tamika, she wanted to borrow money before heading to Myrtle Beach for Bike Week back in May.
I was assigned as an FBI special agent to the Tamika Houston matter. We had information that we wanted to confront Christopher Hampton with to see whether he could validate that information, whether he would cooperate with questioning.
And you don't remember when you let her borrow that money? It was like I told you last time, it was like a couple of days before bike week started.
Did you see her at any point after that?
Nah, that was the last time I seen her.
He was wanting to be helpful and was trying to get the last information that he remembered when he last saw her.
This was your girlfriend?
Nah, we just, she was one of the girls I was messing with.
He shared that he had a girlfriend that was pregnant. And so that becomes a point of confrontation in these interviews. Is Tamika aware of this? How does she feel about that?
She know that I had a baby on the way and she respected it. My baby mama. And she respected it.
Do you have anything to do with her disappearance?
No. Okay. I don't know nothing about it. She was one person I messed with, and I hate, she missed none of her, but, I got life to live. I thought I'd be in the middle of something like this. Saying on TV, but, not in real life.
I got a mother and a father and an entire family that doesn't know what happened to this little girl.
Yeah, but, and I guarantee nothing happened to her. What if she come back, That's right. Christmas time.
While police have no evidence on Christopher Hampton, they want to keep him talking. Then, a letter written on Christmas Eve offers detectives a gift they weren't expecting. What's inside would break this case wide open.
And instantly, I knew, why is this guy telling us he rented a carpet cleaner?
As the seasons change and the months go by, Tamika's family marks a heartbreaking milestone, her 25th birthday. And on Christmas Eve 2004, Christopher Hampton writes a curious letter to law enforcement.
So Mr. Hampton addressed a letter to myself on December 24th. He says in the letter, I went to my apartment and found that somebody had come into my apartment and poured beer on my floor, smeared mayo, ketchup, hot sauce, flour, and all kinds of other stuff all over my bedroom floor.
And in this letter, he talked about he had rented a carpet cleaner. And instantly, I knew, why is this guy telling us he rented a carpet cleaner? He's telling us this because he thinks we know something that we don't know.
He goes on to say, I saw Tamika last the day before I rented the cleaner.
We felt that was very unusual for someone to write a letter to law enforcement about unusual damage in their apartment and ring a steam cleaner, right after the last time they saw someone missing.
I remember Steve bringing me the letter, and my thought is, we have a missing young woman that you were connected with, and you want us to believe it's ketchup? Keep talking, keep writing.
That letter raises suspicions about what might have happened in Hampton's old Fremont apartment, so detectives check it out. Which apartment then?
Far corner.
Back here?
Far corner, top apartment.
We didn't have a warrant. Big lady opened the door, let us in. We didn't tell her why we were there, but other than trying to investigate a crime.
The investigators found a really big bleach stain, which is Latin for I'm covering something up.
We felt like there was enough to execute a search warrant at that prior apartment he lived in.
Entering apartment 215, Fremont Apartments. When we were processing Chris's apartment, we would walk through doing a videotape documenting what it looked like before and after. Straight across the hall is her first bedroom.
We used Blue Star to spray on the carpet, and you spray in the dark, and if there's human blood there, it will illuminate, and it hit in his bedroom area and in his closet area.
Blood was found underneath the carpet. Once we pulled the carpet up, there was large amounts of blood. It soaked through the carpet and was just on the floor, and a lot in the closet.
You find blood in the apartment?
Yes.
But is it Tamika's blood?
We didn't know at that time, but eventually we did. Over the course of a few days, we linked DNA back to her.
With this latest development, Tamika's family now is struggling to keep hope alive. When you find out that there is blood in this apartment, what goes through you?
At that point, I resigned at that point.
In your gut, you know?
I felt up until that point I had a lot of hope, but I think that's when I knew that we weren't going to see her again.
That same day, Lieutenant Lamb gets an unexpected call from Elaine Painter, the woman who said she had visions about Tamika's case.
The night that we found the blood in the apartment, she called me on the phone and said she knew something good was happening in the case. And there's no way she could have known that.
Tamika's blood had been found in a closet, just like Elaine Painter says she had seen in her vision months earlier. Police would later take her inside that apartment.
And we walked up these steps and they opened the door and I saw a closet. And I knew that was where she died.
There's potentially a big break this morning in the case of a missing 24-year-old woman who disappeared last year. Investigators now say they found blood in a former apartment of a person that they've been questioning.
This is a video of the first interview that I had done with Chris. This is shortly after the blood was found in his apartment. What's that look like to you, Chris?
Some kind of stain, like.
It is. That's underneath the carpet in your room. That's blood. See this letter right here that you wrote? In that letter you talk about cleaning the floor, alright? And what this is a crime scene.
Yeah, I don't know about it.
When I interviewed him, he was uncooperative. He didn't want to acknowledge anything. Whatever happened to Tamika happened right there in your apartment.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Listen to me. I don't care if you believe it or not, I'm telling you. Alright?
No. I came to the apartment, it had all kind of damn flour and stuff on my floor, like beer. People pour beer on the floor or something. All kind of like ketchup and stuff like that. No. I ain't got nothing. I ain't with that.
He doesn't want to accept the facts for what they are, that this is blood residue, this is not a kitchen condiment.
Well, her blood is all over your floor.
How you know it's her blood? It could be anybody's blood.
No, it can't be anybody's blood. How long do you think we've been doing this? You don't know that we can tell one person's blood from another blood?
I doubt it.
You ever heard of DNA?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the girl died in your apartment. I'm not wishy-washing around there. I'm telling you that. That's a fact. Watching that now, one reason I would chuckle is the fact that I know I'm lying to him at that point. We didn't know for sure that that was Tamika's blood. We believed it, but we didn't know it.
We're trying to press him to produce Tamika's body.
You're willing to weigh this whole charge yourself?
If I have to, because I don't know what's going on. He got to either lock me up just to solve your case of...
I'm not looking for a body to hang this charge on. I'm looking for Tamika's body.
The solicitor's office didn't want us to charge him until we had the body. At that time, I don't think we had ever tried a no-body case. If you don't have a body, it's definitely not a slam dunk.
Yeah, I was the circuit solicitor, which everyone else calls district attorney. The goal is not an arrest. The goal is a conviction.
So we're trying to identify him as the killer.
Then, unexpectedly, somebody else surfaces, saying she too had been in Hampton's apartment.
There was no reason why she should be in that room.
Tom Morris has the story of a young woman with a big voice and a big heart. She may have followed her heart into some big trouble.
Tamika Houston has been missing for 10 months when the America's Most Wanted segment airs.
We decided to come to Spartanburg to see what AMW could do to get some answers for Tamika's family. The tenant had cleaned up what he thought was ketchup. Crime lab techs went to work, and they didn't find ketchup. It was Tamika's blood.
America's Most Wanted was this show that was interactive.
We'd love to hear from you. You can call 1-800-CRIME-TV, ask for me or the detectives.
People would watch the show on Saturday night in real time, and anyone could call in with a tip. And where are you located?
The show's got a hotline in their studio in Washington, D.C.
Can you describe them?
Where trained employees and law enforcement are at the ready in case a lead comes in.
My name's Steve Lamb. I'm from South Carolina.
We would have cameras there. You would even cover law enforcement walking around from phone to phone. And sometimes they'd say, hey, I have something. And you would give the phone to the detective, and they could talk to the person. America's Most Wanted. We'll pass this information along.
Lieutenant Lamb said they waited, and calls started to come in. And somewhere near around midnight, they got a call from a young woman.
Someone here locally who felt they may know some information. You moved the dresser. She is a young juvenile that had a relationship with Hampton and had went over to his residence close to the crime scene time and had been with him that evening.
Said they go back into his bedroom. She said that he spilled Kool-Aid in the floor.
I got an investigator here locally in Spartanburg to meet that individual that night.
She knows exactly where that stain is.
That kind of helps seal up some information in reference to the case.
The caller is just 15 years old. Police bring her in and interview her on camera. This is the first time that video is being shown publicly. We blurred her and altered her voice.
When I looked at the show tonight, the America's Most Wanted, they said they was talking. They said that whoever it was said that it was ketchup. That stain did not look like no ketchup. It looked like that was liquid that had been poured. It looked like it was coming from the closet.
She said the dresser was pulled in front of the closet door. She knew something that we had not released.
We had no further evidence pointing to where Tamika might be. And the fact that this 15-year-old girl made a link, a connection between blood on this person's floor in his apartment was interesting to us.
And he didn't have no cover on his bed. It was just a brand new bed.
She had visited his apartment and he had what appeared to be a stain that could possibly have been blood, but he tried to explain it away.
And his explanation for the stain was that it was
red Kool-Aid.
Red Kool-Aid.
That's what he told me.
I can't. Goosebumps. There was no reason why she should be in that room. In a way, you're grateful, but then again, you're horrified.
The witness is implicating Christopher Hampton at the crime scene and calling into question his explanation about that carpet stain.
I knew at that point they were zeroing in on him.
National media coverage matters in missing persons cases. It's not just any coverage, it's primetime coverage. Because although it may take a village to raise a child, more often than not, it takes a nation to find a missing child, or anybody for that matter.
In the early 2000s, there was a lot of missing white women that got outsized attention. And it was very frustrating to be a black woman working in newsrooms and seeing how different stories stayed on television consistently.
I was like, listen, you guys are ignoring black women at their expense. In this country, we have 40% of missing persons cases are persons of color. Why is it when you turn on your television, you only see white faces?
Tomorrow marks 1 week since 18-year-old Natalie Holloway vanished on the last day of her senior class trip. I was reporting on that case in Aruba, yet I had not heard of Tamika Houston.
Right. You're reporting on Natalie Holloway, and you're a black woman and don't know about it.
Like other reporters, I too was covering all kinds of stories, often about missing people, women in particular, not realizing some of the people who weren't being covered. What did you hear back when you said, it seems that you're ignoring black women?
There's an ABC News reporter who did write a story about the disparity in which missing black women versus missing white women are handled by media. That was the first bite that I got.
Why did it matter that she didn't make front page news?
That's the gold standard. A national conversation about a missing person is the difference between sometime not only being found, but never being forgotten.
It's just hard and very devastating for me. Everything I'm hearing, it's not good. So, of course, it's killing me.
She's not out there. If something has happened to my daughter, I just want to put her to rest.
While Tamika's parents are grieving, Christopher Hampton, in custody for violating his parole for that bank robbery, is busy making calls from jail.
Hello, this is a collect call from?
Like this one to an ex-girlfriend.
But it was a piece of paper in there, and they had one of your yellow notebook things. And they had fingerprints and blood on it.
I don't know anyone. She contacted us and said she had some belongings of Hampton's.
Christopher Hampton's ex-girlfriend turned in his wallet.
Lieutenant Lamb was going through it and found a drop of blood on a photograph in the wallet.
There was some smudge marks that looked like blood and a partial print. We do the testing on it. It's Tamika's blood.
At this point, that was enough to convince the solicitor's office to go ahead and let us charge him.
You have her blood in his wallet. You have her blood on the floor of an apartment that he used to live in. It's no longer a question of who did it. It is now a question of what happened.
There was still the outstanding question of, well, then where was Tamika? What happened to her? And only Chris Hampton had those answers.
It's been 15 months since Tamika Houston's disappearance. Now, armed with hard evidence, Solicitor Trey Gowdy is ready to have police arrest Christopher Hampton for Tamika's murder.
I remember talking to them about you need to be there when he's released. When they picked him up, what you really want is you want answers for the family. Where's the body?
He was scheduled to be released on his parole violation, and they assured me, listen, we're going to be there to pick him up, and we're bringing him to question him.
You're about to see potentially a resolution here. Somebody's about to be arrested.
It's really a tough situation to be in because you just like, until you know, there is kind of maybe that small sliver of hope that one day she'll just walk through that door.
Because there's no body at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's tough. It's you want to know, but then you don't want to know.
We made arrangements the morning that his release that we would be there, and over the course of our ride back, he was nervous that we were going to put him in front of cameras. So we went to another location. We got cheeseburgers from a local restaurant, and I made sure that we asked for a ketchup bottle, not the little packs, we want a bottle. We were sitting there talking, and the ketchup bottle's on the corner of the table, and I said, don't knock that off in the floor. And he kind of laughed about it, or snickered about it, and I think that was kind of the turning point for him. He stood up, and he said, let's go, and I said, where do you want to go? And originally I thought he meant to jail, but he said, I'll take you to where she's at.
My God. Tamika, is this where fate, faith, and fortune unfortunately meet? Have we finally found you?
How did you handle that news that he was going to lead police to her body?
Major Lamb, I remember him calling me and saying that he finally said that he was going to lead them to Tamika. I said, okay, I'm on the next flight there.
When I got the phone call, I think I just lost it. Yeah, it was tough.
It was just me and my dad when we found out. And I just remember him like screaming to the top of his lungs. And then that's when I knew like my sister was never coming back.
We get in our vehicles, and he drives us across town, up the interstate, into another small town outside of our jurisdiction.
Miss Houston was found in a wooded area, good bit of brush and undergrowth in the area, but some clearings as well.
We get out of the vehicle, we walk probably 100 yards into the woods, and he points out where it is.
Like the X, right?
It turns out Hampton had made a cross with tree branches and laid them on top of the makeshift grave where he'd buried Tamika.
As if I'm going to fashion a cross and put it there is somehow going to mitigate what he's done.
Miss Houston was buried in a shallow grave, and some of the remains of Mrs. Houston had been scattered about the area.
Right here, there were a couple bones on the surface that they saw at that time, and it was in Spartanburg County.
Multiple law enforcement agencies were at the scene.
When I arrived that night, they're still processing that scene and trying to collect her remains. It was gut-wrenching at that point. You just know, you felt so remote, and you felt like, it was like she's been out here alone for all this time. You feel really helpless.
I open my arms for your embrace, but all I feel is empty space.
I remember walking down into deep woods, and by this time we're surrounded by trees.
So come back to me, come back to me.
Watching the pain on my sister's face, it felt like she was in physical pain. It was really just difficult to see her going through that.
And I'm standing there and my eyes are full of tears. And I remember looking down because I felt like I was stepping on something. And I reached down and picked it up. And it was actually one of her bones.
The family came and found a couple bones that had not been picked up, and so for me that was a really sad situation. So I told them I'd just do it myself.
That part of it. Excuse me. It was supposed to be, cleared first before we even got there.
And yet, through it all, something extraordinary starts to happen. The family begins their long goodbye, and quite naturally, in this unholy yet sacred setting, an impromptu ceremony develops at the site.
The family had put up a little cross and flowers there at the gravesite.
You had hoped it would be a different outcome. You do have an answer now, but it's certainly not the answer you wanted.
It wasn't the answer we wanted. It's such a loss. Like, I miss her so much.
But how did Tamika end up dead, and why? Christopher Hampton, back in an interview room, is ready to confess.
You have to fail, snap, man.
Gravesite deep in this wooded area near Tiger River is where Spartanburg investigators say Christopher Hampton led them.
Deep into the brush, investigators say Hampton showed them where he dumped Tamika's body.
Just recently identified after a long, grueling investigation.
After Christopher Hampton leads authorities to Tamika's remains, he then sits down to tell investigators what he says happened the day Tamika died.
We returned back to the police department to interview him in reference to the case.
He tells a story of an argument over money, and he's ironing clothes for work.
Kind of tell me what happened. She wanted to borrow the money, so I said, I ain't got it right now. I said, I got a ticket coming up, I got to pay. I said, and plus, my baby, she gonna be born, I got to buy some stuff for her. Okay. Tell me what happened. And she got mad. She said, well, God, she says, you always talk about that baby. You making the money, you give me some money now. She yap. She stood up and, you know what I'm saying, she went off and she was like, yap. So I just, what happened? I just trying to turn down.
they have a little disagreement, and he turns around and hits her with the iron.
It happened so bad, I snapped, man.
Turn all the way around and show me, so I understand which side we take.
It had probably.
On this side.
Hey, that's all we had.
Based on the crime scene, detectives aren't sure about Hampton's story.
I think there was considerably more damage than what probably would have been caused by just getting hit in the head with an iron.
Did you go check her, or did you just...
I panicked, man. I got out of there.
You panicked and you left.
I got out of there.
When you heard about Chris's confession, when you heard him say that he killed her,
I was really angry. It seemed so violent and so senseless.
He said it hit her, and he didn't know what to do, and then left and came back.
He felt like, she'd be up and gone when she wasn't. So he panicked and wrapped her up in a comforter off the bed and put her in the closet.
He has such little regard for her life that he dragged her in the closet and moved a dresser in front of the closet. It was almost like he wanted it out of sight, out of mind. It didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm scared. So I put in the closet and stuff. Put the thing over the thing. Got the dress over the door.
Hampton tells them he places a dresser in front of the closet door, just as the 15-year-old witness had described to police.
You're dealing with the psychology of someone who could take a life and then be with this underage girl, and this body is in the closet the entire time.
He said he wrapped the body up in his bedding and carried her out to the car.
He goes to Walmart and buys a shovel. The sun's coming up, and he decides to drive down this dirt road, take her in the woods, and he digs a grave.
Okay, what do you do next?
I buried her. He put the dirt back on top of her.
Put her out in the woods, buried her in the woods.
Horrific.
Did you put anything else on top of it?
Made a cross with it. Like with the tree, like a cross.
Was you doing that just as a burial for her or something, or why'd you do that? I mean,
I guess I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it.
He is confessing to a homicide, and his intent is to make the event sound as unintentional as possible. And we didn't believe that to be true because he'd gone to great effort to dispose of Miss Houston's body.
Months later, he returns to that gravesite, removes some bones, as well as Tamika's skull, and takes that and disposes of it at another location.
This is a diagram that I made after we had finished processing the scene. And this shape in the middle is the burial site. One of the most interesting things on this, to me, is this is a fence, and you have this creek right here. What I think actually happened was because her jawbone was the only bone that was found on the other side of this fence, I think he likely took the skull, like he said. She couldn't be identified, or to cover up some kind of horrific damage to it, and threw it in this creek.
I just kind of thought that you had to be a monster to do something like that to someone after a period of time.
Tamika's life reduced to a pile of bones, picked, plucked, and spread apart by animals, weather, and worry. Gone, missing, now found.
Christopher Hampton placing Tamika's body in the woods. The vision Elaine Painter says she had, spot on.
That was who I saw looking through these bushes.
And it seems Tamika had one more message to share via Elaine.
When I was very, very early in my pregnancy, and literally the only people who knew that I was pregnant with twins was me, my doctor, and my husband. Elaine called me, and I had a couple of miscarriages previously, and she's like, "Oh, Rebecca," and I could tell she was struggling a bit. She says, "Yeah, I'm seeing Tamika, and I keep seeing her, and she's holding these 2 blue bundles," and I'm like, "Really?"
I said, I don't have any idea what this means. I did not know that she was pregnant with twins. Maybe God was saying that it's going to be okay, that you're going to get to keep these.
I was just blown away because, again, and I knew what the sex would be of my twins.
Twin boys?
Yeah, twin boys. And
two
blue bundles. And to this day, I always feel like Tamika, she's watching them and she's around.
With the sound of the song, Some Way, Somehow, a memorial service for Tamika is held in South Carolina.
These people gathered here at Foster Chapel Baptist Church in her honor.
Tamika Houston is later buried in Fairfax, Virginia, just a few miles from her mother's home.
I was so confused on why she had a closed casket. I was really confused. I'm like, I want to see my sister. And that's when my mom, she kind of explained it to me, it's not much in the casket.
Christopher Hampton is finally headed to trial, but there's a turn of events in the courtroom.
I was shocked.
And on the 20th anniversary of Tamika's death, her Aunt Rebecca gets a welcome surprise. Nearly 2 years after Tamika Houston went missing, her former love interest, Christopher Hampton, is heading to trial.
It felt like it was going to be, a really tough couple of weeks in Spartanburg, but on the first day of trial, he ends up pleading guilty. I was shocked.
Are you guilty of the crime of murder?
Yes, sir. I don't know why he pled guilty. He wound up getting the exact same sentence that he would have gotten had he gone to trial and lost.
Mr. Hampton, the sentence of the court is that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for life.
I was really emotional that day, and he really didn't show any remorse.
Life without parole.
If anyone deserved life, it had to be Christopher Hampton.
To this day, those who knew and loved Tamika still wonder about the motive for her murder. Hampton says she was upset that he was saving money for his unborn child.
She wasn't like that. She wasn't, those are your children. No, those are our children. That's how she was. That's why his story doesn't make any sense.
My sister she cared a lot. I couldn't imagine her saying that at all.
I don't know if I'll ever get the true story of what happened. So I'm trying to learn to just come to just be at peace with it.
Her family was just beginning to accept a dark new reality. Life without Tamika.
You said that this case touched you like no other had. Why?
Because I know how much black girls don't matter. And I want to always be a reflection of how much value that they had to me.
What do you most want people to know about this woman that you loved?
With her death, I met so many women. I met so many fathers. I met so many sisters and brothers. They still haven't found their loved ones. So I know she's putting me on a higher mission.
The lack of media coverage about Tamika's case led to the creation of the Black and Missing Foundation. You advocate with the Black and Missing Foundation. Is it still a struggle to get the stories of women of color noticed?
It can be. But I think there is more of an awareness of it.
Is that Tamika's legacy?
I do believe that. I do.
On the 20th anniversary of Tamika's disappearance, we brought her best friend Zelda and her Aunt Rebecca together. They hadn't seen each other for years.
Zelda! Don't do that.
I'll try not to.
Honey, don't cry. I love you so much. Don't cry.
It's so good to see you.
You are the best friend ever.
I know.
You know that?
And she sung at the wedding. Oh, so beautiful.
I miss her.
I know.
He's a high, he's a home, and I know he watches me.
It just makes me think about what my sister could have been. And it was just so unfair that her life got snatched from her.
He watches me.
What a deeply moving report tonight, Deborah. A quick note here. 2020 did reach out to Christopher Hampton for comment. He did not respond.
So far, David, his appeals have been denied. For more on this case, you can listen to Erica Alexander's Audible original series, Finding Tamika. It's available now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night. Right here tonight, an all-new season of 2020.
And this story couldn't have more twists and turns. A beloved doctor missing, then found dead.
A man with no enemies, but a lot of secrets. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
Dr. Garcia, police department, make yourself known, sir. Here's the master bedroom. Dr. Garcia? Dr. Garcia, Officer Miller.
You've got your gun pulled and you're ready for anything.
He's here.
He just says he's here. Dr. Garcia was deceased on the couch.
You know, is this real? How could this have happened?
He was the most gentle, kind, wonderful soul you could imagine.
This doctor, this paragon of the community, was found dead in his house.
He's been robbed. He's not just dead, he's been robbed.
There were racks and racks that were empty. There was no gold. There was no silver found. I have so many questions about the case and have hardly any answers.
And you don't know if it's natural causes, if it's self-inflicted, or if someone has murdered him.
My life became a true crime show.
Who's this guy and where's all this money going to? So what is that relationship?
And I said, you can't let that guy go. There's something wrong here.
We're on our way to Ketchikan, Alaska, the Rock. To get here, you have to either take a plane or take a boat. And if you take a plane, you still have to take a boat, because the airport is located on one island and Ketchikan proper is located here. It's beautiful enough that it's a place worth coming to. It's remote enough that it's a place worth escaping the place you came from. And it's also the site of an enduring and deep mystery involving one of this town's most respected and well-regarded citizens. And it all began with one out-of-the-blue phone call.
City Dispatch, can I help you?
Hi, I'm trying to do a wellness check on a friend of mine that's in Ketchikan.
Okay, what's his or her name?
Eric Garcia, and I haven't heard from him, so I'm getting worried.
On March 18th of 2017, Ketchikan Police Department, we had a welfare check call come in. This person actually is from the Seattle area.
He says he's a friend named Jordan Joplin.
He's the general surgeon there. I just want to make sure that he's okay.
Okay.
We had an officer respond to the doctor's house.
What is a welfare check exactly?
Basically, somebody is concerned about somebody's well-being.
Officer Devin Miller had lived in Alaska since he was 3 years old, and on that day in 2017, he was on patrol, and he was sent to Dr. Garcia's house. How often would you be asked to do a welfare check by someone who lived a long ways away?
I gotta tell you, that's the rarity. I responded I drove up to the residence. There was snow on the ground. I could see that there was no tire tracks.
What did you do when you got here?
Checked the house, made sure it was secure. We looked for any kind of footprints. Everything was secure. Lights were on at the house.
Did you try to get into the house on the 18th?
I did check the lock to make sure it was locked.
What did that tell you?
Looked like typical of what somebody does when they go on vacation. After that, I contacted his office.
The police learn that Dr. Garcia's colleagues, they're aware he has plans to be out of town. He's attending a medical conference in Las Vegas. This is a conference he attended every year about this time. It's about a 7 to 10 day trip. So that's that, right?
That's that.
You don't have to get back in touch with the caller.
I do not.
But Dawn Hink, now she manages Dr. Garcia's schedule at the hospital, and she's his very good friend. She's not the one who took that initial call from the police. So officers are unaware that she was getting a little concerned that she hadn't heard from Dr. Garcia.
Dr. Garcia would send me messages probably 20, 30 times a day when he was on vacation. We were in constant contact where he was, how much fun he was having. I had sent him a message and didn't receive anything back at all. So it definitely struck me as odd.
Any questions or worries about Dr. Garcia would be kind of big news here. Ketchikan is a small town, and he's only one of 2 general surgeons for the whole area.
We don't have a lot of doctors here. It's such a small community.
He was often the only one here. He'd have to take care of an awful lot of things that he might not take care of if he was working in a large metropolitan community.
What kind of surgeries was he doing for the most part?
Any kind of trauma,
logging accidents,
gallbladders, logging accidents, helicopter crashes. We have tons of different unique situations up here that are unparalleled to anywhere else.
Dr. Garcia had become a beloved presence since moving here to Ketchikan, a town he first discovered the same way so many other people do, on an Alaskan cruise.
So Alaska is an enormous state. There's also a panhandle that comes quite far down. Ketchikan is the southernmost city in that panhandle. So Ketchikan's the first stop for most cruise ships coming north into Alaska, and it's the last stop for cruise ships heading down to the lower 48.
Population of Ketchikan is about 8,000 or so, but that comes with an asterisk, because between the months of April and October, Ketchikan is a cruise ship mecca. As many as 15,000 passengers disembark from these massive boats every single day. What is it like when it's busy here?
Wall-to-wall folks stumbling over each other. It's good for our economy.
They want to see whales, they want to see eagles, they want to see bears, all of which we have. And of course, people come here a lot to catch the fish. We're known for being what we call the salmon capital of the world.
Locals and cruise ship tourists, Dr. Garcia treated them all with the help of Dawn Hink, who later in mid-March 2017 received a troubling call about Dr. Garcia's whereabouts.
I got a phone call from Dr. Garcia's mother, and she had asked me to please go to the house and see if I could find out, if he was there, because he wasn't responding to anything she was doing, and so I did that. Everything at the house seemed to look pretty normal. The vehicle was not there. We drove past the airport lot, and Eric's truck was there, just as if he was going to be going on a vacation. And so everything seemed okay.
With signs pointing to Dr. Garcia being out of town, the police say they've followed their standard operating procedures.
In order for us to enter a house or to forcibly go inside of the house, we're going to need some kind of an exigent circumstance. In the case of Dr. Garcia, we didn't have those circumstances.
Then, 6 days after that phone call for a wellness check, Jordan Joplin, the friend from Washington State, calls again.
Basically trying to find out if they got a hold of Eric or if because I know that Saturday he was supposed to come here to Washington, which is where I'm at.
Joplin says that Dr. Garcia did not follow through on those plans, and he's still concerned that something is not right.
To what degree does that move the needle?
It really didn't move the needle much at all. I don't know that the information had really changed much.
But the next day, Joplin calls for a third time.
Nobody's heard from him yet. He gave me a house key, and I'm going up there on Monday because I haven't heard anything, and I am very worried. I did talk to a lawyer, and he said that I could talk to you guys, and I can give you guys permission to go in there, but I would have to physically be there. So we're more than welcome to go do that for you.
Yeah, Joplin? Yeah, okay.
And so, on the morning of March 27th, it's Joplin showing up to open Dr. Garcia's front door. But police officers keep him outside the house, where he waits with a concerned Dawn Hink. What happens over the next 90 seconds or so will set off torrents of emotion and unveil a mystery that's filled with sick twists and shocking turns. The police enter the residence with their guns drawn, and then...
Dr. Garcia! Police Department! Can you make yourself known, sir?
This close friend that had been calling the Ketchikan Police Department for the welfare check of Dr. Garcia, Jordan Joplin, called once again and said that he was just arriving from Seattle.
You had this guy in town who said he had keys to the house, and he wanted you to accompany him.
Yeah, we provide a service, and we were going to provide that service. Sergeant Cheatham and I got there around 9 o'clock in the morning. The house looked the same as when I was there before, so we just waited for Mr. Joplin.
It was kind of a big house for a single guy like Dr. Eric Garcia, but the only in Alaska views must have suited the 58-year-old surgeon who had arrived here 8 years earlier, his latest stop on a journey that began more than 4,000 miles away in Puerto Rico. Which town in Puerto Rico? Was it Ponce, which is the southern side of the island? Our grandmother had a heart defect, so for him to pursue medicine, it was important so that he could help the family. I think he knew that to get his specialty that he wanted to, he was going to have to leave.
After he finished his residency program, he moved to Eagle Pass.
On the Rio Grande, the border between Texas and Mexico, Eagle Pass has about 30,000 residents. So back in the mid-90s, it's an opportunity for a young surgeon like Eric Garcia to do it all.
When you are a general surgeon in a small town, you get to do a lot of things.
Did he like the kind of big fish in a small pond aspect?
I believe so. He could be more prominent that way, more involved, would have more impact.
He loved to travel. We traveled the world together. We decided to take one of those Alaska cruises that took place in September 2004. That was the first time he went to Ketchikan.
He really liked Ketchikan.
A few years later, a recruit called him to try to get a general surgeon for Ketchikan.
I thought, oh, of all places, Alaska? I mean, that's pretty far away.
Far away for him, indeed. On paper, anyway, Dr. Garcia seemed like a fish out of water.
Dr. Kolach from Juneau's on line 1.
We only have one line.
Not unlike Dr. Joel Fleischman, played by Rob Morrow in the 1990s TV series Northern Exposure. But in reality, Dr. Garcia was a huge hit, with co-workers and with the townspeople too. They admired both his surgical skill and his personal warmth.
I met Dr. Garcia probably a week or so into my work. and he was the most gentle, kind, wonderful soul you could imagine. We were extremely close. He would come over to our house for family and friend gatherings, most holidays.
He was very easy to like. Always pleasant, always fun to be around. Sometimes you run into people and you like running into them. He was one of those people.
Bob Jackson had sold Dr. Garcia that house. Their bond was a close one. Now, on the morning of March 27th, 2017, he'd be joining his friend Dawn Hink up there. Just minutes after, she and Jordan Joplin arrived at the site to meet the police.
I see two vehicles drive up the driveway, and one was a red Ford truck, which I knew Dr. Garcia drove a red Ford truck.
They said he had a red truck. Is this the truck?
Went and picked it up, yeah.
Where'd you find that?
Down at the airport.
The officers are recording on body cameras. Well, let's take a look.
That's Mr. Joplin.
This is Jordan Joplin using his keys to open the front door.
Correct.
Dr. Garcia! Police Department!
What did you expect to find?
An empty home.
Can you make yourself known, sir?
Typical procedure. We'd announce Ketchikan Police Department. Let it be known if you're inside. There was no response.
Dr. Garcia? Dr. Garcia! Officer Miller! Police Department!
You've got your gun pulled and you're ready for anything.
It's standard for how we enter a residence. We're worrying. We're checking anywhere somebody could hide. We just want to make it sure it is secure. We cleared the first floor and started moving up the stairs to the second floor. That's Sergeant Cheatham in front of me. He reached the top of the stairs and he said that he found the deceased. Dr. Garcia was deceased on the couch. I think my mind just went, this doesn't make sense.
Just outside the front door, it's Sergeant Cheatham who has to break the news to Dr. Garcia's friends.
There's no easy way to put this, but he has passed away.
Jackson had arrived just in time to hear what had happened to his friend Dr. Garcia.
We were all upset. Everyone there, I was probably briefly in shock.
I walked to the opposite side of the house as far away as I could get, just despair at that point.
Dawn Hink is brokenhearted, undone. She is totally distraught. And Garcia's friend from Washington, Jordan Joplin, says he is hurting physically.
No, I don't blame you. Okay. Well, if you need to go to the hospital, we can get you to the hospital. If you want to go sit down, go sit down.
Joplin recovers, but as the news spreads around Ketchikan, the entire town goes into shock.
What did you think about when you heard that news?
I guess kind of panic. Not really wanting to believe that. Is this real? How could this have happened?
I didn't believe it at first. No, it can't be. But it was.
Garcia's mother had been worried that he was not returning her calls. Now, from thousands of miles away, Dr. Garcia's brother Saul is calling the Ketchikan police for an update.
My wife and I were in a conference room, and we called. We were both sitting there calling, and I had the officer on speakerphone, and he's telling us this. Your brother was found dead.
The police start trying to figure out what exactly has happened to Dr. Garcia, and they start to learn that the good-hearted doctor actually had some health problems.
Major heart issues. He was being hospitalized this January.
This year?
This year. They hospitalized him overnight here in Ketchikan.
My first impression is like, oh, maybe, there was an event with his heart to the point that now he passed away.
We can make theories on how we think somebody dies, but we just won't know until we get the autopsy results back from the state medical examiner.
But after police discovered what's behind this locked door, their thinking will totally pivot to matters more criminal. It's a shocking find. This town's revered surgeon, Dr. Eric Garcia, dead on the couch in his home. But how? Ketchikan, Alaska police, they've got a locked door mystery on their hands. A scene that's filled with clues. And right from the start, something about this scene just doesn't smell right.
Coming up the stairs, it smelled like barbecue briquettes.
You're talking like lighter fluid and
yes,
charcoal briquettes?
Exactly. The deck door was wide open, propped open by a pillow, and the barbecue was right there with burnt ash in it.
A lot of people might barbecue on a deck, but not many people would prop the door open with pillows. Did that strike you as something unusual?
Very unusual.
Around the body, there was actually a pill bottle that had Dr. Garcia's name on it. Next to the doctor was a coffee table that was pushed up close to the couch where he was located.
There was an open package of bacon, and there was a partially burned charcoal briquette on the coffee table.
Outside the house, grief continues to wash over the friends of Dr. Garcia. But Bobby Jackson is agitated about something.
This house needs to be secure. Yeah, we'll take care of it. I mean, the alarm needs to be set. What I'm saying is there's stuff in there that needs to be locked up.
And when Devin Miller comes downstairs, Jackson pulls the officer aside.
And he said, there's a storage area underneath the stairs that is locked, and it is got gold and coins and silver in there, and a large collection of collectible alcohol.
Dr. Garcia had hundreds of mostly silver. He had some gold, but he collected gold coins and some of the mint coins. And he had a lot. When I moved him from his rental to Dr. Garcia's new house that he purchased, it sagged the back of my car down. He had so much gold and silver in there.
When did the coin collecting and the collecting in general begin in earnest, from what you can remember?
So we were exposed to that from my dad. He started ordering coins, and it could be gold coins or silver coins. Then he started buying some gold ingots and stuff like that, and silver.
He had many, many watches, probably about 20 high-end watches. And every time he'd show me one, he would tell me how much it cost. This one was $1,600. This was $2,400. He also bought a lot of hard liquor.
He had this huge liquor collection.
Was he much of a drinker?
He liked his, here or there, but it was mostly for the having these things.
Friends say that he had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gold, silver, and other valuables.
So detectives rush to open the dead-bolted door because they're hoping to confirm Dr. Garcia's prized possessions are still in the house.
I contacted Mr. Joplin, and so I had him open the door and looked inside.
There was no gold. There was no silver found. There were racks and racks that were empty.
I did not see a large collection of alcohol or coins or gold or anything. There was 30 or 40 bottles.
I looked in and I said, everything's gone. It's all gone. There was nothing left. I said, he's been robbed. He's not just dead, he's been robbed.
But what's going through your heart at this moment?
Oh, it was just utter disbelief. And then it even became some anger.
According to Bobby Jackson, Dr. Garcia's close friends had wanted to build Dr. Garcia a more secure place for his treasures, but now they were gone. And oddly so, because the storage door had been locked, just like the front door was.
The house was not broken into. There was no forced entry.
There were no outward signs, and with the items missing, it meant we had a major theft.
Detectives were called and asked to come in and help investigate.
But remember, detectives have no idea if any of this is related to Dr. Garcia's death. Because after all, friends said he just loved to give away some of these valuables as gifts to friends, even to patients.
What I've learned about Dr. Garcia through the course of the investigation is that he was very generous and shared things often with those that he loved and was close to. He would share portions of that alcohol collection that he had. He would gift gold coins.
He would buy things for his co-workers, for his friends. He was very generous. Very generous not only with gifts, but with his time and with his service.
I mean, he had no bounds. He just, hey, you like that? Is that cool? Have it, and it's a gold nugget. It's an expensive piece of jewelry. Normal people don't just give to whoever. It struck me as an odd thing. It was like, oh, that could be bad.
The randomness of it kind of concerned you. Mm-hmm. Why exactly?
It just throws red flags. You can collect some unsavory people that way.
Perhaps there's a very good reason why virtually all of Dr. Garcia's valuables are gone. Maybe he didn't plan on being on Earth much longer.
Hi, this is Jordan Joplin.
In fact, close friend Jordan Joplin had told police on the phone that he'd feared Garcia might have harmed himself.
I am very worried. He's been missing, and he was contemplating suicide. Nobody's heard from him, his parents. 10 days it's been.
Okay. This is news to friends and family who didn't see any evidence that Dr. Garcia was depressed or suicidal. So as investigators take up this trail of the luxury goods, the question of exactly how Dr. Garcia died becomes even more important. They are now looking at Dr. Garcia's mysterious death in an entirely new light.
Knowing that the missing valuables were gone, it really changes things immensely.
Cops are intrigued enough by what they found here inside the house, but what else is missing might be more mysterious still. Like, what's all that on the wall?
It changes everything.
And away we go.
Sunny Ketchikan.
It looks quite nice today. For police here in Ketchikan, Alaska, like Deputy Chief Eric Madsen, the disappearance of what authorities believe to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in luxury items from the house of Dr. Eric Garcia adds to the mystery in the wake of his sudden and unexplained death.
I have so many questions about the case and have hardly any answers. So it's frustrating not knowing.
And you don't know if it's natural causes, if it's self-inflicted, or if someone has murdered him.
I don't know any of those answers in that moment.
And for cops, there's a big riddle in plain sight, all over the walls of the house. What was all that? All those? They look like bases for multiple smoke detectors.
Every single place that a smoke detector was located or should have been was just the base, with the wiring harness sticking out. There was not one smoke detector inside that house. They were all missing.
That struck Garcia's close friends as extremely odd. Dawn Hinks saying she couldn't imagine Dr. Garcia getting up on a ladder to remove those smoke detectors.
And there were other details of how his house was found that day that Dawn says made absolutely no sense. Like that barbecue that was found upstairs reeking of lighter fluid. Well, Dawn says Dr. Garcia was never known to grill. His loved ones describe a man who had difficulty doing anything for himself.
A lot of times they called me his work wife, picking up dry cleaning, making and bringing his lunch.
He is so committed to this career that he's not doing anything else. So his house could be on fire. He has to call somebody else to go, hey, can you check on that fire and maybe see if you can call the police or something.
Given the circumstances and the mystery surrounding his brother's death, Saul Garcia decides to make his way to Ketchikan just hours after getting the heartbreaking news. He's got questions of his own to answer about his older brother, who, according to Saul, rarely shared with him details of his private life. Do you think he was lonely?
Yes. And the reason for that is after he died, I went to his house.
alone one night in the house Dr. Garcia said he loved. His brother Saul is seized by a powerful feeling.
I was by myself, and it was so lonely there. There's no lights outside. It's so quiet. And inside that house, I just felt the loneliness. I just could not imagine him living in there.
So, what might such apparent loneliness have driven Dr. Eric Garcia to do? That question reverberating weeks later when the toxicology results are released, revealing what killed Dr. Garcia, an overdose of morphine. But it's curious because there's no morphine located in Dr. Garcia's home by authorities.
There was no sign of injection, so it had to have been consumed.
So that's noteworthy. Morphine found in his stomach. So that means it was swallowed, not injected. Also, there are traces in his bloodstream of a prescription sedative. Was that the empty bottle by his body? And then there's this. Garcia's blood also had an elevated carbon monoxide level.
The toxicology report revealed a 9% value of carbon monoxide.
Now that is 4 times the normal limit. So this raises the attention of police when you consider all the other aspects of this case that they've learned.
Remember, cops noted a strong smell of lighter fluid in the house, and the upstairs deck door propped open with a charcoal grill placed right at the door.
The deck is on the windward side of the house.
That's the southeast side.
Southeast side of the house.
To Officer Miller, that was one of the oddest details of all, because everyone in town knew, in Ketchikan, you did not mess with the southeast wind. So no one in Ketchikan who was a resident here, in your view, would ever have barbecued on the southeast side of their house?
Especially on the second floor that's going to get some wind.
So maybe Dr. Garcia didn't know about the wind. I mean, nobody figured him for the barbecue at home type. Or maybe it was somebody else who'd been manning the grill. And then there are those curious items that turn up on the coffee table next to Dr. Garcia. An open package of bacon, a partially burned charcoal briquette. And as they uncovered the body and examined Dr. Garcia, they noted something else.
I could see his left hand was on his abdomen, and there was charcoal on his fingertips that had gone to his white t-shirt.
That CO reading on the toxicology report also making the mystery of the smoke detectors ominous indeed.
I could see that the smoke detectors were removed so that the fumes from the barbecue wouldn't set it off. At this point, I think we suspected there was foul play.
Weeks after Dr. Garcia's passing, Saul Garcia was working remotely from his late brother's home.
Throughout this whole time, I always feel like Eric is very close to me. I always talk to him. I said, Eric, you need to help us. We need to get this thing to a resolution. Are we missing something?
Saul breaks for lunch and then finds himself strolling a mile or so along a bridge when suddenly the whole case takes another dramatic and totally unexpected turn.
As I'm walking, I get a ping on my phone, and I pull it out, and as I look at my phone, I notice these white dots down below. I took some pictures with the telephoto lens, and sure enough, those look like the smoke detectors.
Saul immediately calls Ketchikan police. Matson and other officers recover 6 smoke detectors in the woods. Authorities then go back to the house and match the smoke detectors with the 6 empty mounting plates via their serial numbers.
It's looking more and more to police like somebody was trying to get rid of evidence. It looks like somebody may have been involved in Dr. Garcia's death.
The morphine and the combination of the drugs, all the items being stolen, it just all started adding up.
In my gut, this death did appear as to what it looked like.
And as police continue to dig into the case, the evidence is going to lead them to a very unlikely suspect. Someone you might think was one of the last people who'd ever commit this crime. wake of the death of Eric Garcia, the community of Ketchikan is struggling with the loss of their beloved doctor. And as one of only 2 general surgeons in the area, the death of Dr. Garcia causes a medical crisis.
Dr. Garcia's death impacted the community greatly. There were a variety of patients that required his care. And with his specialty as a general surgeon, people just weren't going to get that from him anymore.
It was a big blow to the community. We really needed another surgeon, and so we scrambled for a while to continue surgical coverage.
Meanwhile, the probe into Dr. Eric Garcia's mysterious death, it's become a criminal investigation. Amid the toxicology results, the missing valuables, that strangely placed barbecue grill, and the absent smoke detectors, it's looking like someone might have had a hand in Dr. Garcia's death.
In my gut, this death wasn't what it was as it had appeared.
To unravel that mystery, cops dig deep, and they're looking into every aspect of Garcia's life, including his financial records.
We want bank records to show where he's got accounts in what banks.
And they make a startling discovery.
Garcia had made wire transfers to several people, including someone named Logan Cruz.
Where's all this money going to? Who is Logan Cruz?
Turns out police have a pretty good idea of who Logan Cruz is.
Nobody's heard from him yet.
Okay, and what's your name?
My name's Logan. Oh, my real name is Jordan Joplin, but everybody calls me Logan. Sorry.
The caller uses 2 different names, and we didn't find out till later what that was about.
Some of Dr. Garcia's friends had met Jordan Joplin, a.k.a. Logan Cruz, but still, he was a bit of an enigma to the people on the scene that day when Garcia's body was discovered. He was clearly close to the doctor. Remember, he drove up in Garcia's red pickup truck that day from the airport, accompanied by a girlfriend.
No one really in town knew him. He doesn't have a history in the town at all.
Joplin's demeanor raises a lot of red flags that morning to investigating officers, as well as Dr. Garcia's friends.
Mr. Jackson informed me that nobody knows who Jordan Joplin is.
To Dr. Garcia's friends, Joplin's behavior seems questionable. But he's also the reason everyone assembled for a welfare check in the first place. Remember, he called the cops. He was raising concerns about Garcia's well-being.
Had been calling the Ketchikan Police Department for the welfare check of Dr. Garcia.
When police descended on Eric Garcia's home in Ketchikan for a welfare check, it was Jordan Joplin who'd flown up from Washington State with a key to open the residence. And the sight of those keys in his hand would be a sight Dawn Hink would never forget.
When he pulled out the keys, I knew there's one set of keys, and he has them. I mean, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
So what is that relationship? Who is this guy?
So we just close doors to keep privacy.
So after finding the doctor deceased, police have a word or two with the out-of-towner.
Okay, how did you guys meet? I'm just curious.
Initially at the airport, actually.
Jordan Joplin tells police there's a reason why he's got Dr. Garcia's keys, because Dr. Garcia gave them to him. He also said Dr. Garcia gave him power of attorney.
You said you have power of attorney?
I have a paper that he gave me that says power of attorney. Attorney at the top.
Where is it at?
It's my house.
When Joplin is asked about the hundreds of thousands in valuables, he has a quick answer. 2 of them, actually. And they contradict each other.
Do you know of any high-valued items in the house?
No.
Anything you think is high? You're obviously, where do you stay when you're in Ketchikan?
Here.
Okay. And you're not aware of any high-valued items in the house?
Yeah, actually.
Okay. I'm asking you about it because...
Oh, yes.
So you need to be truthful with us.
For police, suspicions about Garcia's mysterious friend, they're only deepening as police continue to dig deep with their investigation.
One day later, with a warrant, they go through that red pickup truck, Garcia's truck, which Joplin had been driving. There in the glove compartment, they find a vital clue.
In the truck, we found a receipt, a way bill.
From a barge company that transports goods all through Alaska along the coast down to the state of Washington.
When we found a receipt in his truck, for me it was something suspicious was going on.
Ketchikan police officers rush to the local shipping company. They're hoping they can find out exactly what is being shipped out of state.
Detective Purcell and I went to investigate to try and get some kind of video.
And what police would spot on surveillance video would take investigators far away from Ketchikan and into the lower 48 on a ticking clock search, and the man might be a murderer. But when the private becomes public, deep secrets will be revealed, shocking the people of Ketchikan.
You told me that he wanted to commit suicide, so I'm getting worried.
This doesn't make sense.
Just despair.
Bizarre.
This doctor was found dead in his house.
He's here.
For a city like Ketchikan, this infiltrated the entire community. Everyone was talking about it.
My life became a true crime show.
Police are now looking into every single aspect of Dr. Garcia's life.
Do you think there were aspects of his private life that he thought would be difficult to share with your family?
Yes.
Business related or? Nope. Friendship related? I think it's more friendship.
Who exactly is Jordan Joplin? And how did a respected doctor in Alaska become entangled with him?
He was two different people.
He was very good at manipulating. Very good.
How good?
Whatever Jordan wanted, Jordan pretty much got, honestly.
This crime scene just became massive.
But nothing in this case is more stunning than the chilling video clip that prosecutors play in court.
Oh my God.
Ketchikan, Alaska, as beautiful and remote as an international pop star, inaccessible by car, abundant fish and wildlife and wondrous vistas that delight the thousands of cruise ship tourists in season. Dr. Eric Garcia took a good look during one of those cruises and left Texas to move here. The kind-hearted physician making a lot of friends among the town's 8,000 year-rounders, grateful to have in their midst such a skilled surgeon.
Dr. Garcia, Officer Miller, Police Department.
But March of 2017, there's trouble in paradise. Big trouble.
He's here.
When cops find the beloved Dr. Garcia dead in his home.
He was just the nicest man.
Everybody knew him. Everyone wanted to say hello.
What a nice guy.
Initially, there are questions about his death. Could it be suicide, a heart attack, or something more sinister?
Even after the autopsy was done, the medical examiner did not find any signs of trauma.
After that, the toxicology report came back and showed he had actually died of a morphine overdose. But the question is, how did that morphine get in his system?
So what or who had taken the life of this trusted physician? And could this scenic hideaway of fewer than 10,000 residents be harboring a murderer? Dr. Garcia's house, a locked door mystery filled with potential clues. A barbecue grill by an open door, a charcoal briquette on a table, missing smoke detectors discovered tossed into nearby woods. Precious items of value that should be here, but aren't anymore. Is your sense that whatever is missing from the house is directly connected to the death of Dr. Garcia?
I don't know that we knew that it was directly related to the death.
But remember that shipping receipt the cops found inside Dr. Garcia's truck? It's a potentially huge clue.
It's that right there.
Yes, sir. This is a close-up of that receipt from AML, Alaska Marine Lines. It's a barge company that ships products to and from Ketchikan. Essentially, it was a receipt that was in the name of Jordan Joplin, listing the doctor's address as a shipper address to Jordan Joplin in Maple Valley, Washington. The container weight was total about 4,400 pounds.
2 tons of stuff from Dr. Garcia's place, headed to the lower 48? Really? Cops need to know more about that shipment's stat, and if the often generous Dr. Garcia knew anything about it. Another discovery starts to offer some answers.
I did locate a Walmart receipt that was in the garbage in the kitchen.
That Walmart receipt listed several items, notably several plastic bins or totes, things that you would store a variety of items in, just plastic boxes with lids.
We do have a few questions for you.
Interestingly, Walmart actually was discussed the first time the cops interviewed Jordan Joplin the day Dr. Garcia's body was discovered. As he's asked about his last visit to Ketchikan, Joplin says the 2 men went to the store together.
Yeah, I think it was 16th is when I used his truck.
Okay, because you'd have to return the truck to him.
Well, he was with me. So, we went to Walmart.
So the police follow up. They come here to the only Walmart in Ketchikan, and what they find on the store's surveillance security camera marks a big moment in this investigation.
What you see is Jordan Joplin moving about Walmart from various different angles.
Walmart has an enormous amount of cameras, and essentially we followed him through the store.
It shows him from the side, it shows him from above. It just shows Jordan Joplin checking out with all these stacked plastic bins in his cart. One of the camera angles actually shows Jordan Joplin with a huge grin on his face.
He had an employee from Walmart help him with another cart because he had that many bins. So once all those items were loaded back into the truck, Mr. Joplin got back into the truck and departed the parking lot.
But what you don't see is Dr. Eric Garcia. He's not in a single shot. I mean, in the very first interview, Joplin says that he went with Dr. Garcia to Walmart together, so it shows a lie.
This raises even more questions for authorities about Jordan's shipment at AML, Alaska Marine Lines.
So at the time, Detective Purcell and I went to AML to investigate.
And what are those things that you're expecting to see?
So we're just trying to find out the logistics and where the physical items are at.
That's the point in time where we saw video footage of Dr. Garcia's truck, and then Jordan Joplin going from the vehicle and unloading items.
Detectives now know Jordan Joplin used those plastic crates they saw him buy at Walmart to load something into shipping containers. Bad news, it had all happened 10 days earlier.
The containers actually were already gone. They were already on the barge on their way to Seattle.
But now that we realized and found that the property was now in transit, this crime scene just became massive. It went from Ketchikan, Alaska, down to Seattle, Washington.
And what did you know definitively about the stuff you were trying to find?
We didn't know anything.
Whatever is inside those containers, detectives want to get their hands on it before Jordan Joplin does. They take off for Seattle, and the clock is ticking.
I've been involved in a lot of cases, but this one was pretty fast-moving. There was definitely a sense of urgency.
The 2 detectives join their partner, Officer Devin Miller.
It is highly unusual for City of Ketchikan police officers to go to the lower 48.
They are heading to this facility in the port of Seattle. It's a race against time. The discovery of a shipping receipt in Dr. Garcia's truck with Jordan Joplin's name on it leads investigators to a shipping company in Ketchikan. Only there they discover that 2 tons of stuff has already left Alaska. The containers that Joplin has had sent have already arrived here in Seattle. They're at the port. So officers in Ketchikan hop a plane toot sweet.
We were trying to get those containers before anybody else did.
Sergeant Matson, Detective Purcell, and myself got onto a plane and went to Seattle.
We went to AML on East Marginal Way in Seattle, Washington, and found the containers. They had already been set aside and secured by AML personnel. We cut the locks that were secured on the containers and started to open them.
Oh my God.
There were cases of coins and collectibles, the gold and silver. There were hundreds of bottles. It was a massive collection. These boxes were so full, it almost seemed like they were overspilling when we opened them.
His entire life, his computers, personal checks, bank checks in the name of Dr. Garcia, passport in the name of Dr. Garcia.
Cops now have thousands of dollars of Dr. Garcia's missing stuff, and it's just the beginning. Next up in their plan, place Jordan Joplin under arrest for theft. For this, Ketchikan cops need the able assistance of King County law enforcement.
It's an out-of-state agency. It's their investigation. They've developed the probable cause for the arrest, so they need a local agency with them to both help them make the arrest, draft any search warrants that need to be done.
The Seattle cops want to lure Joplin out of his house so that he can be arrested at the port. And it turns out, according to the shipping company, Joplin has been just itching to take possession of that precious cargo.
We knew that he had been calling. I think he was a manager, and he talked about, this guy's been calling all the time. I'm like, oh, great, well, have him call him back and tell him to come down here.
I gave Jordan a call. He wanted to know if his shipment was in, and I said, no, there's a snafu.
So this was a ruse.
A ruse.
You cooked up to try to get him out of that house and get him in a place where you could get a good look at him, so to speak. And as sure as the rain in Seattle, Joplin shows up at the appointed time.
We can park here. Just hop out here. I introduced myself. Hey, I'm with the sheriff's office. I need to speak with you. I got to go talk to these guys. And I stopped him and said, no, you need to stay here. These are detectives from Alaska, to which his response was something along the lines of, I don't want to talk to any of you guys. You can just talk to my attorney. And it's at that point that I said, well, you are under arrest.
He was treating you like the help.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was very dismissive.
With Joplin in custody, it's now time for Part B of the plan.
Are you in the lead car as you do this?
Yes, I would
make the drive.
That's executing a search warrant at his residence. But while Joplin is no longer at home, there is someone there to answer the door.
I was his fiance. At first, I looked out our bedroom door. There was a bunch of unmarked cars, police officers with bulletproof vests on, and I'm like completely naked. I'd just gotten out of the shower, and I was like...
For investigators, it's just one of many surprises they're going to uncover with Joplin. Remember, that day he had showed up at Dr. Garcia's house, he was with another woman he identified as his girlfriend.
I did have concerns that he was then maybe cheating on me with her, but at that point, I wasn't 100% sure. It wasn't until after our house got raided that I found out, so...
Kristen may have suspected Jordan was cheating, but she was adamant she knew nothing about what had brought this small armada of police to her doorstep.
I stood outside of my house for 6 hours. They took my phone, took all my electronics, because the warrant was on my name as well.
She asked where Jordan was, and I said, well, he's talking to some detectives from Alaska right now. What do you know about Jordan's relationship with Dr. Garcia? What about some of this property that's here?
They were like, we are not interested in you. We are just interested in Jordan.
She was aware of everything coming in from the doctor over a period of time, but according to her, from Jordan, this was all just a gift from the doctor.
I was just trying to process of where I missed these flags.
The woman who accompanied Joplin to Ketchikan and Kristen were both cleared by law enforcement. Meanwhile, cops swarm the site, and all the evidence they retrieve is sent to Ketchikan police.
Notably, during that search warrant, detectives had found a Faraday bag that contained the doctor's cell phones. A Faraday bag is essentially an electronic blocking bag or device. Once it's placed in there, it is cut off from that communication. It hides the signals. We also found in another location Dr. Garcia's wallet with his ID. Jordan Joplin was charged with theft in the first degree.
Joplin would plead not guilty, but really his arrest is just the start of unraveling this big mystery. And the more investigators dig into his background, the more they wonder, who exactly is Jordan Joplin? And how did a respected doctor in Alaska become entangled with him?
A mass manipulator.
He was two different people.
Out to get whatever he needs at that moment and then to move on like a tornado.
That police raid in Maple Valley, Washington, during late March 2017, would mark the beginning of what she describes as one big wake-up call for Joplin's fiancé, Kristen Coles Nelson.
My life became a true crime show. When they showed up at my house and they first announced that they were cops and stuff, they say we're the Washington County Sheriff Department, and then the guy behind him said, I am a sheriff from Ketchikan. And I looked at them puzzled. I think I said, does this have to do with Eric? And then they asked me why I thought that, and I was like, well, he just passed away, and I know that he was terminally ill.
But of course, Dr. Eric Garcia was never terminally ill. Kristen says she immediately realized that was just a lie Joplin had told her to explain his increasingly frequent trips to Alaska.
My world turned upside down and inside out. He did have two sides. He had this facade that he put out, that he was a great person and that he didn't like liars, but he was one himself. I didn't know what to believe, what was the truth.
The truth could be a rude awakening for those who knew Jordan Joplin. And as investigators were discovering, Joplin's trouble in Alaska was not his first brush with the law. Jordan Joplin had grown up here in Forks, Washington, the town made famous in the Twilight films.
In the state of Washington, under a near constant cover of clouds and rain, there's a small town named Forks. Population, 3,120 people.
Jordan's dream was just to take care of everybody. Aunt Sandy, I'm going to get rich and I'm going to take care of all you.
Sandy Flores and her husband were raising 3 boys in Forks when her younger sister Debbie moved to town after a divorce. Her youngest, Jordan, was just a year and a half.
He was very impulsive, I think is the word to use. Instead of thinking about it, he would just do something and then go, oh wow, that was fun, let's do it again.
Jordan Joplin was all grown up by the time this young woman encountered him in the summertime of 2010.
He was very high energy, and so that was just, that positivity was kind of infectious.
Jessica Everton met Jordan Joplin in Bonnie Lake, Washington, that's near Tacoma, while they were each working at a food bank that was run by her father. Jessica knew Jordan was there for community service. And here's what the young single mother says she did not know, that it was ordered after he was convicted of 2 felonies, after abandoning his car and then claiming it had been stolen. Investigators became suspicious when they noticed he had filed an insurance claim 3 hours before reporting he'd left the vehicle on the side of the road. Oh, those impulses.
He was very kind. He listened. Once my dad got hurt, Jordan kind of took over what my dad's duties were. Anything that my dad needed, Jordan was on top of doing.
And that's when you started going out with him?
That's essentially, yes. He was intoxicating. He really was. And then he used that to manipulate. He was very good at manipulating. Very good.
Summer ended, and so had Jordan's community service. Joplin telling Jessica he was working as a personal trainer. She never saw any clients. He was, however, spending plenty of time at the gym.
He was an aspiring stripper.
How did he look with his shirt on?
Gorgeous.
Jessica says her relationship with Joplin took a dramatic turn after a Christmas shopping trip in 2010.
We were shopping at Walmart. As we walked out, we got swarmed. They're accusing me of stealing. I'm flabbergasted.
Walmart security accused the couple of shoplifting a number of GPS units from the store.
the police showed up and we were arrested, and we were both placed in the same squad car.
Could you ever have imagined in your life you would end up in the back of a squad car?
No. Or with somebody next to me saying, "Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me."
The police report noted that Jessica and Jordan said the theft was his idea. They were both charged. And what happened to the charges against you?
They ended up getting deferred because I wanted the whole thing over behind me. I wanted no part of any of it. I said, I'll do my community service. I won't commit this crime again.
Jordan, on the other hand, pled guilty to theft. He received a suspended jail sentence and, you'll never believe this, more community service. But Jessica says Jordan Joplin refused to go quietly into the night.
Jordan's not very nice when he's angry. His text messages and all of that stuff.
And what are those messages saying that you're getting?
At one point it was, "If I can't have you, nobody can." And he started threatening my family.
Jessica took action to get Jordan Joplin out of her life.
I get a restraining order against him.
Joplin disputed Jessica's claim in court papers, saying he'd moved on with his life and had a new girlfriend. What happened after you got the restraining order?
He stopped.
But some speak in glowing terms about the Joplin they knew.
I never expected somebody like that to be in my life, you know.
Crescenta Lawrence had hit rock bottom in 2012, she says, before Joplin's attentions pulled her out of a hellish spiral.
Jordan made certain to be there, helped me with the bills when I didn't even ask for it. He babysit the kids so I could go to the hospital. He was an angel. I was just happy to be a piece of furniture in his life. He radiated such energy about him that anybody would want to be around him.
And anybody occasionally meant just about everybody.
He'd have 2-3 girlfriends at the same time, as a matter of fact, in the same truck, showing up at my house. One of the girls, she goes, "I don't know what it is, but I can't seem to stay away from him." Later, I had a few connections that I got him into the adult industry. He was a dancer for a while, and then he became a model and an adult entertainer. He was doing movies.
My name is Logan. Here to see the house. So may I add online? Yes, sir.
Jordan Joplin worked in adult films under the stage name Logan Cruz. Remember, that's the name he used when he made that welfare check call for Dr. Garcia.
My name's Logan. What's your last name? Oh, my real name is Jordan Joplin, but everybody calls me Logan.
So just how did Logan Cruz from Washington State come to cross paths with a surgeon from Alaska?
That was the big question, was the police described him as a close friend, so what is that relationship?
In life, Eric Garcia was able to closely guard his privacy. With his sudden death, that control was gone. As questions are answered, secrets are revealed. Did keeping those secrets cost Dr. Eric Garcia his life? The home of Dr. Eric Garcia in Ketchikan, Alaska, had become a crime scene. But was it just the latest location for the alleged deceit and deceptions of Jordan Joplin? His friends back in Washington State knew Joplin could be a smooth-talking playa, an occasional bad boy, but Dr. Eric Garcia's focus had been on medicine, and that always left little room for any kind of well-rounded life away from the hospital.
I know that he dated when he was young, and mostly I know this from my sister, because my sister actually got more into his business than I did. So I think I left those topics alone.
According to his family, they were left to wonder if Dr. Garcia's lack of experience in dating might have made him easy prey for the alleged manipulations of a Jordan Joplin, especially after a life-changing operation in Seattle kind of opened up a chasm inside the surgeon who had always put his work first. You talked about how you felt this triple bypass was kind of a turning point. in his life?
Well, I mean, he kind of fell into a little bit of a depression right after, which is not uncommon from having cardiac surgery. And he reevaluated his life, and he started also thinking, well, maybe it's time for me to enjoy my life some more.
It was around that time that Joplin was working as a massage therapist in Washington State. Joplin would say Garcia paid $500 the first time he gave him a massage, and that's how their relationship began. Why do you think he didn't want to talk to people about his relationship with him?
I just think that certain people have a really hard time accepting who they are.
In Ketchikan, with his many patients, the decisions of Dr. Eric Garcia saved lives. With Jordan Joplin, did Eric Garcia's decisions cost the doctor his own life? To all but his closest friends, he never shared intimate details of his private life, not in Alaska and not in his family. Do you think there were aspects of his private life that he thought would be difficult to share with your family?
Yes. I personally suspected that, so I never really questioned him. But certainly it would have been something hard to discuss with my mom or my dad.
Yet among those in Washington who knew Joplin, Eric Garcia was no secret. Amanda Polreich was a close friend of Joplin's. When cops got a tip she had important information about him, they tracked her down in Washington State.
Well, I knew that he was his sugar daddy.
That the doctor was Jordan's sugar daddy?
He would send him money. He would ship him things. Whatever Jordan wanted, Jordan pretty much got, honestly.
There is. Okay.
Inside Garcia's home, police find a letter he received from Joplin.
Friendship related? I think it's more friendship.
I love you, and I hope you never forget that. The letter from Joplin to Dr. Garcia began, ending with the words, "Love always, Jordan." In the search of Joplin's home in Washington, a card he had received from Eric Garcia with a darkly ironic message.
We located a Valentine's Day card. It was dated February 14, 2017, addressed to Jordan from Eric. I paraphrase what I read in that. "You are my first and only love. Not kidding, you will probably kill me, but know that I will never let you down."
Your brother was Dr. Eric Garcia. He showed great judgment every time he entered an operating room or spoke to a patient. Why did he remain in Joplin's life?
Well, in these types of domestic types of relationship, these things happen where people control somebody else.
As they seek to link Joplin to the morphine, cops are also working to connect Joplin to a detail found in the toxicology report. Remember, Dr. Garcia's elevated levels of carbon monoxide, all that odd barbecue evidence. And that raised the question, was the entire scenario with the charcoal grill staged by Joplin to make it look like Dr. Garcia killed himself via inhaling carbon monoxide from the smoke from the barbecue? And did Joplin remove those smoke detectors to prevent them from going off and alerting authorities?
Cops go back to that video of Joplin from Walmart where they knew he bought all those packing crates. Well, the evidence also showed that's not all he bought.
He also bought a bag of charcoal. It was the one other thing, other than all these plastic bins, that Jordan Joplin purchased that day at Walmart.
There it is. It's listed right on that receipt. So was this Jordan Joplin gathering the elements he needed to make it appear as if a depressed Dr. Garcia wanted to end it all? Then, one more shocking piece of evidence that's found on Jordan Joplin's iPhone. It's evidence that might just seal his fate. In Ketchikan, Alaska, Jordan Joplin sits in jail on a theft charge as authorities are seeking to tie him to the murder of Dr. Eric Garcia.
The results of the autopsy in this case couldn't say whether Dr. Garcia had purposely ingested this morphine or whether someone had given it to him. They could only say what the cause of death was.
There was still the question out there is, where did the morphine come from?
Everything's starting to come together as police learn about that friend of Joplin's, Amanda Polreich. Polreich tells police that she had gotten morphine from a friend whose spouse had been prescribed the medication, and that Joplin had asked her just how much morphine would be fatal.
He was like, if I wanted to be able to just off myself one day, how much do you think I would need it?
Like, how much would it take to either, get high on it or slip away?
Mm-hmm.
When did that conversation happen before the doctor was killed?
I gave it to him way before, months probably. What Ms. Polreich was able to do was show that Mr. Joplin was the one who procured the morphine to eventually kill Dr. Garcia.
Was there any discussion on how he used the liquid morphine on the doctor?
Nope. He never mentioned anything about what he was doing at all.
Here's the police theory. Joplin gave Garcia that fatal dose of morphine during his March 2017 visit. Then, Joplin left the state and then called in the welfare check so that he would have the perfect alibi.
So Mr. Joplin was charged with murder in the first degree and also theft in the first degree.
Joplin pleads not guilty to all charges.
For a city like Ketchikan, this was just an unheard of crime. And so it really kind of infiltrated the entire community. Everyone was talking about it.
So much so that the case was actually moved from being tried in Ketchikan to being tried in Anchorage.
I tried in my opening statement to present this clear picture of why Mr. Joplin is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of all of these charges.
The prosecution methodically lays out before the jury a timeline of what they say is Joplin's involvement in the case. And they bring Amanda Polreich to the stand to put the morphine in his hands before Dr. Garcia's death. They put police on the stand to testify about their investigation.
The fact that when Mr. Joplin called in the fake welfare check, he told them to call Dr. Garcia's cell phone, but he had that cell phone with him in Washington in a Faraday bag was also particularly damning evidence.
But nothing in this case is more stunning than the disturbing video clip obtained by police from Joplin's phone that prosecutors play in court.
On March 17th, 2017, the defendant, Jordan Joplin, took out his cell phone and he took a video of Dr. Eric Garcia, unconscious, gasping for air, and close to death. 10 days later, on March 27th, 2017, Ketchikan police officers found Dr. Garcia dead, in the same position as in the video, wearing the same clothes as he did in the video.
Yet in Joplin's video, there's no charcoal visible on Dr. Garcia's hands, showing, prosecutors say in their summation, all the barbecue stuff happened afterwards, after that fatal dose of morphine.
When it's the defense team's turn, Joplin's attorney says that the prosecution's case is entirely circumstantial and that Dr. Garcia himself administered the morphine that took his life. And as for that video, well, the defense acknowledges that Joplin may not have reacted appropriately, claiming it was out of fear for Dr. Garcia's job, but it doesn't mean he's guilty.
The defense calls Jordan Joplin.
To testify in his own defense, Jordan Joplin takes the stand.
Did you know Dr. Eric Garcia?
Yes, I did.
Did you love him?
Yes.
He characterized it as a romantic relationship.
He's very kind, emotionally supportive.
He offered a number of alternatives for what he said was happening.
And the shipping containers with his belongings? Well, Joplin tells the jury that Dr. Garcia was planning on retiring and moving to Washington.
He was giving me a bunch of stuff, and then also I was under the impression that he either bought a house or was in the process of buying a house. He was supposed to retire in the spring of 2017.
Prosecutors later say there is no evidence other than Joplin's own word to suggest that Dr. Garcia ever planned on retiring and moving to Washington. Choosing to testify on his own behalf leaves Joplin wide open for cross-examination.
Mr. Joplin, you started to plan killing Dr. Garcia much before March of 2017, right?
I didn't try or kill or plan to kill anybody.
What really stood out was the different stories throughout even his own testimony. You didn't try to wake him up at any point.
I did.
Okay, so that's new today too. When did you do that?
Either sometime on the 17th. I didn't shake him really hard because I wasn't trying to startle him. But he seemed to be sleeping hard, so I just left him alone.
On the 14th day of this emotional trial, the defense rests.
So after we finish closing arguments, then the case goes to the jury, and ultimately the case is in their hands.
Also in the jury's hands, the fate of Jordan Joplin.
You just don't know what a jury's going to do. It's excruciating to not know what's going to happen.
"7 years after Dr. Eric Garcia's death, testimony in the murder trial of Jordan Joplin is over. Then, on day 3 of deliberations, jurors say they've reached a verdict.
I think the most excruciating part is when the jury has come in and we're just waiting for the words to be said.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jordan Joplin, guilty of murder in the first degree.
Guilty of all charges. He was found guilty of murder in the first degree and theft in the first degree.
The second we got the guilty verdict, I was amazed, but elation. I was so excited that this can't happen again to another person.
On April 9th, 2024, Jordan Joplin was brought back here to Ketchikan for sentencing. Eric Garcia's brother Saul made the roughly 6-hour flight from LA to Ketchikan, plus that ferry from the airport, just so he could deliver a victim impact statement. In your address to the court, you spoke directly to Joplin. What did you want him to hear from your mouth?
So essentially that the one person that cared for you and he just essentially gambled your life away. I mean, because you thought you could get away with it.
The court preferred the victim's statements to go first and then the state's argument, or?
Yes, please. Just state your full name for the record. I'll be glad to hear from you.
Our hope is that the court gives the strongest consideration possible to all victims' statements today and arrives at the maximum sentence possible for Joplin.
This was intentional, significantly premeditated, brazen, craven conduct, and it calls for a significant sentence. For murder in the first degree, the sentence will be 99 years with none suspended.
I feel like justice was served. Jordan got 99 years in prison. Alaska does not allow the death penalty, so that's about the maximum that you can get.
I was pleased. It's not because I have this vengeance in my heart that he wants to pay. No, I don't see it that way. I was very glad that this is not going to happen to anybody else.
In Ketchikan, the love and affection for Dr. Garcia lives on in so many ways. We heard from everyone in Ketchikan how they like to remember your brother, Dr. Eric Garcia. How would you like us to remember him?
I think Eric's legacy is about compassion and caring, but he helped so many people along the way with medicine or just being friends with people and connecting with them.
At the hospital where he worked, a memorial tree planted during a beautiful ceremony, a lasting tribute to someone who was once an outsider, but was embraced by the townsfolk here as one of their own.
Part of the ceremony was everybody would pick a stone that would remind him of Eric. Love, happiness, friendliness. One by one, everybody would lay a stone in a circular fashion around the tree. Now you can see how big the tree is 7 years later.
The tree blooms every year, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to commemorate a beautiful man.
And we should point out tonight that Jordan Joplin has now filed an appeal of his conviction.
David, if his appeal is denied, the earliest he'll be eligible for parole is in the year 2050, when he'll be 64. That's our program for tonight, and here's to a great new season of 2020. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir. Incredible stories coming your way. This is just the start. From all of us at 2020 and ABC News, good night.